Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian Primert's Tribeca Trade Group, and today is the 15th of October, so halfway through the month of October. And a lot of things to kind of go over here. I think that we had a nice bounce day, I would say. So I had the wrong theme of the day in here. Bounce from a 3-day move. Oops, 3-day move down in indices. And small caps, particularly strong for the day. So we'll review some of these things. I thought you could see the performance from the open to the close change. From the open was very strong today. I've been talking about how it's been, the last couple days, definitely it's been more of the trend that we normally see. The move is made in the after hours market, but today was the exception. Today we actually saw some names that really moved decently from the open, but it was not the things that that you probably were looking for bounces in this morning. Those kind of materialized, after a few hours of the of the cash session. We started to see things rebound nicely, but oil and gas names, banks, they were the ones that were strong today, as well as the home builders too, which is a sector that I liked going into the session today. So let's talk about the averages first, and then I will get into individual groups and some individual names that I thought were interesting for the day. Option activity was also pretty interesting for the day too. They always kind of give us some ideas and some clues about some positioning and so forth. Averages. So like I said, small caps were really the bright spot for the day. They finished up 1% for the day, so really nice. And let's look at the small cap chart. I haven't really been doing too much in this area. Haven't been very focused on it, but really nice move today. I think it underperformed a little bit this week, but we go back to this weekly chart, and again, we are above value. So there has been a trend change that has been happening here in the small caps. I just haven't really talked about it in the last couple of days until what we saw, at the end of last week, which was a really strong bar, first bar that closed above value since from the beginning of the year. So really strong. And then of course, if you look under the hood in small caps and see what names were performing pretty well. If we go over to, so let's talk about, let me finish the indices first, and then I'll go back into that small cap performance. But if we go to the daily chart, what I noted this morning was that there was support lining up on multiple time frames within a few, within a really small width, or area of the chart. So what I talked about was interesting how short-term support levels are lining up on multiple time frames. This is the email that I send out to members every day, right around 8 o'clock in the morning. And that looked pretty good, right? We talked about this level as well, which is the top of value, and we talked about how that there was a virgin point of control sitting down here. So fast forward until after the close, you could see that yes, we did bounce. We didn't get all the way into this 3,420, which that's fine, but that is the support, that we're looking at this point. Remember, we did break out of value earlier in the month, and what was resistance is now support. So 3,420, that's a nice test and bounce. And then also what I thought was particularly notable was, we started the week above value. We took out this virgin point of control, went a little bit further, and then broke back down. And I referenced this. I said this in yesterday's video. I said, hey, this could be a level that we get down to, and we did get down to there in the overnight market, 3,430. I'm rounding up there. It's 3,429 and change, but it is actually 3,430. Sorry about that. But that was a nice bounce on the 1 hour support level. And then if we go to the smaller time frame, the 5-minute virgin point of control, that was taken out this morning. We'll just wait for Thinkorswim to adjust, but it's got to adjust once more. It was actually, I believe, this candle that took it out. Thinkorswim just does a lot of number crunching behind the scenes, and there it is. Right? Again, virgin point of control. Why are they important? Because it's a level of high volume that has not been revisited. So this was one from this Friday back here. So this was taken out again, almost taken out at around 5 o'clock this morning, but right on the open, it was taken out. Right, and then you could see the price action since that was taken out. It was we rallied a little bit, pushed back, rallied, pushed into this 200 period moving average, failed the first time. Second attempt at that two, or maybe that's the third attempt, was the final breaking point. So that's a really nice rally. Again, if you want a little bit of insight into why the indices were strong today from the open. It's the 15th of the month. Sometimes there's money that is put to work on the first of the month and the 15th of the month. Let's go over to NASDAQ too, because I spent some time on there yesterday. What did I say in yesterday's video? Right, that we had this funky looking not inverted, but regular head and shoulders on the short term time frame. Well, we broke that, right? And what I said in the email this morning was that we've got two levels of resistance. Right, we've got this 200 period moving average, as well as the top of value. So we held the first level. Again, not that big of a bounce, not as big of a bounce as if we look at the 5-minute. Again, this kind of grinded higher for the rest of the day. Not the same thing as what we saw in the small caps, right, which were really strong. S&P strong, not as strong, but Qs not that strong. Still bounced, right? Tough to complain about that, right? And then lastly, before I talk about sectors, bonds were really strong in the pre-market session, and look at what they did today, right? So they got rejected, right? Here was your break that we talked about a week and a half ago, break of value, down into the 200 period moving average, rally back up and gets rejected at the bottom of value. Right, so that 163.30 is the level that you want to watch on the upside, and the downside is that 200-day moving average in bonds. All right, bonds again very important because there's a lot of bond proxies. Also it's a gauge of risk on, risk off. All right, and so sectors, right? So it's kind of interesting. I don't have any positions on in energy, but I'm sure watching different groups to see if something changes in them. XOP has been a dog, right? These energy stocks have been, some of your biggest underperformers, but they're trying to turn the corner a little bit. So again, I will probably just be watching, unless I really find a name within the group that is, in an uptrend, because I'm, again, mostly a trend trader. So I'm not going to go long, for the most part, names. I'm not going to go long names that are in downtrends. And if I find something that's showing relative strength, that is, above the 200-day moving average and trending nicely, then I will give it a shot. But for the most part, I'm just kind of watching this group, right? But nice performance. Right, Chevron. So I'll continue to look. We'll watch option activity for some clues. Maybe they'll point us to a trade in the space. But as of now, not really doing anything within this group. KRE, the regional banking ETF. Some of the banks sold off earlier on the earnings reports. Today was a little bit of a different story. I think Morgan Stanley did okay today, finished in the green. Goldman, which was up nicely pre-market, but as usual, a lot of these banks, they give back the early gains, gave it back, and finished down 1% as well as gave back yesterday's gains. So we'll kind of watch this group. I do think there's other areas, right? You can kind of say, hey, well, if you don't like financials, well, look within the group of financials, right? We know about the payment space, right? For years, that's been much stronger, higher, fintech. But this MSCI looks pretty interesting, right? This is a name that, they do all the management of all the indices, like S&P Global. MSCI does that similar. This name, I used to own this name in the Tribeca Trade Group tactical portfolio, but once it failed here, I got out of the name, and it broke below the 50-day moving average. But it's been pushing back here, and I do like this name, but I have to have like a, the technicals have to confirm it for me. So, that is definitely a level to watch. And I started a position that I'll hold. They report earnings, I think next week it is 10/27, right? So, or 2 weeks. So, I'm looking for a little bit of a move, maybe up to 374.64. All right. So I think that's interesting. But hey, don't let anybody tell you, right? I know everybody seems to be wrapped up in this value versus growth, argument. You don't have to, like, when growth doesn't participate a day or a couple days, there's other areas of the market that you can go to. Now, you don't have to be like a value investor to participate in a railroad or in something like an MSCI or something like a home builder, right? Which is not exactly growth, right? But don't let these guys on Twitter, tell you, oh, this is only going to last for a couple days, and forget about anything other than growth, right? There's other things that you can do besides just trading growth names. You don't have to sit on, you don't have to sit on your thumb because growth isn't performing that day, right? There's plenty of things that you can trade in the market. So, you know, don't let the so-called experts, try to tell you what you can and what you can't do. You can make money in anything you want to, provided that you have a system, that you have discipline, right? And you've kind of researched the trade and know where you're going to have a stop price, know where you're going to take targets, so on and so forth. The home builders, I want to talk about this group just for a minute because I spent, this was one of the first areas that we talked about. Really nice green bar in the home builder ETF today. So I like this group. I gravitate, again, towards the relative strength, but I looked at Lennar, I looked at DHI, also Zillow, which I don't think really finished nicely on the day, but it's still holding this top of value. So it may just need a little bit more time. These are kind of funky looking candles after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red days. So for me, as long as it holds 148, that's the level for me. It's a good, like, I try to make things, again, in my system, I want to make things as simple as possible to follow. I don't want to make them overly complicated, but somebody asked me the other day, which I just like this type of reasoning. They said, "Hey, do you like this name?" Well, I like it as long as it's going up, or it does what I want it to do. For now, it's holding this 148. I'll tell you, I won't like this name if it breaks support. Right? Then I know that's doing something that that I was not looking for it to do. Right? So as long as it holds 148, I'm going to give it a shot, and I will like it if it goes higher. Right? I like stocks that go higher, and that are kind of easy. Right? So easy setup, and then if it doesn't work, you get out of it. You try to stay as unemotional as possible to some of these stocks. So that was so the home builders. That's where we kind of started the day, and and then I think there's a lot of trade setups if you have some patience. Like this JD.com did finish down 1% for the day, but it's holding, right? It's holding support. It's holding the breakout. So same thing here for me. I'm in some December calls. I like the stock as long as it holds 79.45, right? Where do I not like the stock? If it breaks $79, right? And I would like it, obviously, for it to return, halfway and even further all the way back to where it was. That would be super for JD.com. Snap, also an interesting name. This did actually close on the highs, believe it or not. You got a nice looking setup here in Snap. I think this name often gets overlooked, but look at the consolidation. Spent the whole week in value, and it's breaking out. And if you back it up to the daily chart, you could see this nice little consolidation in an uptrend and out to highs. So this was a name I traded today in the room. Run. This was a name that we went over at 10 o'clock this morning, right? Saw some option activity, right? And another hot solar name. right? And it hasn't fully triggered. If you want, well, you could do one of two things. You could use the 50-day moving average, right, which is this line coming in here as your support. But I would like to see it reclaim 64.77. But there was interest in the name today. There was some call buying. One of the first notable orders that we saw early on in the day. ESTC, we also saw this interesting roll of calls. Pretty decent sized roll. Well, it looks like they took about half the money off the table. Right? We talked about being able to read order flow in yesterday's video. It amazes me that some have troubles with this, but ESTC, so a software name, right? It did bounce on the 20-day moving average. I did not take this one. It was kind of a, you had to pick and choose. Nike, I believe, I thought we saw some call activity. I'm trying to remember because there was a lot of names today that were of interest. Nike, yeah, there was this particular order here. There was some January calls that went up. I thought there was something else that brought my attention to Nike today. Maybe I had an alert set on it. But remember, strong earnings, broke out, made new highs, and then has been coming back and retesting top of value in the 20-day moving average. I got long this name today. I did take a target. I would like to take, I was really kind of shooting for 130, but I didn't get it today. Notice the Vpoc being taken out, right? So reversal on the downside Vpoc, right? This was from last week's value area. So that was a name that I went long. We talked about Lennar already. Team, they were buying calls, I think, for tomorrow. Look at this thing. So really nice bounce. Again, I went long stock in this one. The options were too wide. That's right. It was October 30th. This could be some positioning going into earnings, right? We're going to see a lot of these types of trades. So we did see these October 30th, right? Notice where they report earnings, the 29th. So they're going just after earnings. And look at the size trade they put on here, right? That's a really nice size trade. That's a $2.5 million trade. All right, so that caught my attention today, about an hour into the close, and something like that, and where I've got a level to trade against, right? I've talked about option flow a lot in yesterday's video. For me, it just gives me an idea. Somebody's looks like they're positioning into earnings. That makes sense to me. What also makes sense to me, the technicals. I got a level to trade against, 187. Right, as this thing right around the 3 o'clock hour was just getting into value. I got into this one. 188.40, right? And again, putting my stop price here. Took my first target today at the close to the end of the day. And then the next one will be at 194. All right. All right, so that's a little bit about today's trading. I'll talk about one name that I got dinged on today, biotech, right? I'll tell you, for biotech, you really have to know the space. I got long VRTX on just a nice chart setup, and this thing, I got smoked in this thing today. It happens. This happens a lot with biotech names, right? So if you're going to, if you're going to be involved in this space, you have to know that there's always a little bit, I think, higher risk that they can miss on a drug study. It's always more about, I think anyway, about the drug studies than about earnings for the biotechs. And it reminds me that you really, like, if you're going to, in my opinion, right, this video is for information purposes only. I'm not giving out any advice or recommendations. But if you're going to traffic in this space, you have to size your trades appropriately. Because something like this can happen, and it's happened to me before, and it's a reminder that maybe I just stick to the ETFs because I'm not an expert in biotech. I don't watch like the calendar for when a drug is coming out. Even so, I don't know if that would even help that much, but at least you know the risk is coming. In this case, I don't think this was on the radar. This was a scheduled event, but you know it's very dicey, these biotech names. I've been in a couple of them where they miss on something and the bottom falls out, right? This thing's down was down 50, $60 today, right? That's painful. So that's not what I was expecting. It's at this Vpoc. I didn't like the way this stock closed today. It didn't show any, you know, major support. I traded a little bit of it. I traded some calls because I thought this thing was coming back to life, and I got out of the calls, and then I made some money on the calls, and then I just dumped the stock. Right, that kind of helped me a little bit from a mental standpoint to get some money back in some short-term calls. But you know, it happens, right? You can't, you know, nobody has a crystal ball that is going to tell you that this is going to happen. So you may laugh at me when the stock comes back, but I don't really have anything to kind of trade against. You know, I could use maybe the low of the day, but you know, this is probably going to take some time, right? And you kind of have to watch it like a hawk. So, hey, I'm showing you, you know, as always, you know, giving you real trades, right, that happen rather than, you know, the guys who are not doing that on Twitter, right? You know, we're trading real money here, and you know, they're real experiences. And if this is something that you're interested in, rather than the nonsense that goes on Twitter, we're like, oh yeah, you know, I got out here at the ultimate high, right? No, you didn't, because you didn't show the trade, and you know, you're not showing your P&L either. So, you know, all that is, you know, the majority of Twitter is fantasy trading. So I see it day in and day out. It's remarkable that some of these people have followers. Many of them are really good salespeople, but you know, stuff like this happens in trading, and you have to kind of figure out what to do. Now, I'm not saying what I did was right in this name. You know, clearly I had a chance to get out at 230 today, but you know, you have to kind of make your own decisions and just realize that not everyone is going to be perfect, but I would rather just go on to another name. And that's personally me when something like this happens. Because again, I'm looking, you know, my stop price was broken overnight. And yeah, you know, hindsight 2020. Yeah, I wish I would have taken it out off in the after hours market yesterday. But you know, nobody's perfect. You're not going to be perfect in trading. I'm not going to be perfect, and it is what it is. So I hope this helps going through a little bit, put through, you know, when something doesn't work right, so that you know that there's not just winners. But yeah, this kind of, you know, smoked out my P&L in the beginning of the day. So it was a little bit of a battle. All right, guys, have a great night. I will see you tomorrow. And again, I think a lot of good-looking setups. I'm not going to go over all of them in this video, but I think a lot of things. You know, people have been waiting for some names that got a little bit extended in the short term to kind of come back into support, and now you've got some trades to kind of look at. All right, guys, have a great night.